Good morning, and thank you for joining us for 13 News Now Plus for live impact news here. A lot of things are happening right now, getting underway, and we are monitoring it, particularly in the U.S. House, as debate has begun on a GOP healthcare plan that we are expected to hear more and more from our lawmakers in today. We're also monitoring outside of the court in which Nick Reiner is expected to make his first court appearance after the death of his father and Rob Reiner and his wife there just days ago. Now the son is accused of murdering both of them. We're also monitoring situations after major weather issues in Washington State, that is. And to start us off this morning, we have meteorologist Craig Moeller. Craig, we actually were on the stream yesterday in the moments in which we saw the governor of Washington and the county administrator there in King County talk about the flooding issues that they have for a storm that took place there. Flash floods has really impacted their infrastructure. What's the latest that you can tell us?
So this has been going on for days, and we're not done with it either. That's the thing. There will be periods where they catch a break in the Northwest for, temporary stretches, and then additional rain comes back in. We had reports yesterday of that second levee breach in the last 24 hours. Two levees about 60 miles apart creating flooding. In addition to that, there are highways that have been washed out. Motorists, we had word of one motorist that tragically lost their life trying to cross flooded roadways. We talk about it all the time. Never try to drive through those flooded roadways. And it was a situation where the gentleman was on the phone with his wife, asking to call for help. And the guy, by the time they got to him, the car had filled and they just couldn't get to him in time. So very, very difficult situation there in the Northwest. You're looking at the winds. Those are 500 millibar winds, kind of midway up through the atmosphere. And with that, you see that steady flow into the Northwest, those winds bringing more moisture in. As we take a look, not only have they been dealing with the flooding, but there's actually been a few areas with some severe storms. You see there is a warning there right now, severe thunderstorm warning. I'm going to try to bring it up for you so you can see that area that is under warning. This just came up. Only 1,000 people or so in the Pacific Northwest under that warning, but Cascade, and it looks like, is that Stibnite? This monitor is so small, it's hard to read that. But I just wanted to tell you guys, again, we do have the severe storms and that potential out there. In addition, more flood advisories, and not just in Washington State and northern Idaho, but parts of northern California also under advisory. This atmospheric river has been bringing the moisture in across a good chunk of the northern and northwestern U.S. here, and all the way up into British Columbia. So this has been a big area. You'll notice Seattle, Tacoma getting a little bit of a break now, but those areas, again, just out to the east-northeast of Tacoma, dealing with that breached levee that was near Pacific, Washington, and you see that rain steady just pouring in. Again, that was late last night and early this morning. Finally, a little bit of a break. You see it right there, how the showers are kind of winding down. But as I mentioned, we're not done just yet. As we take a look here, I'm going to go ahead and bring about the outlook for additional flash flooding or excessive rainfall. For today, I'm happy to report that the National Weather Service, the Weather Prediction Center, is not calling for excessive rainfall in addition to what they already have. A lot of what you're seeing now is already in motion from what had happened previously overnight. As we go forward, there's still some potential, but it's not really identified and highlighted by the Weather Prediction Center. That's today. Tomorrow, though, look at this. Level 2 threat again for Oregon along the coast. Yesterday we covered on the weather desk, there was a landslide there in Portland, or not in Portland, but along the coast there in Lincoln County, Oregon. So they've been dealing with so much rain, not only flooding, but some of those steep slopes which would never flood. When the rain comes down at that rate, the land can't hold it, slides. So we had landslides here in Oregon, Lincoln County specifically. As we look ahead Thursday, good chances for more excessive rain there. And then on Friday, the excessive rain area most likely shifts a little farther to the south into coastal sections of Northern California. So we're going to be watching all of that over the next couple of days. I can tell you, again, it is a concern, and we will continue to monitor that. I think folks really, really need to be mindful. This is not something that's going away real soon. Do you have any questions, Eugene?
Well, it's one of those things where yesterday when I heard them speak, and you can just hear the concern out of the governor's voice yesterday when they were talking about the infrastructure issues that they're having right now. And currently they're having a lot of power outages in that area too, thousands without power within the region. But one of the things that I thought was very interesting is him saying, like, listen, trying to pace people, this is going to take not weeks, but months. Yeah. To get us back on track when it comes to just infrastructure. And it's another one of those reminders where, again, we're talking about flash flooding for the most part here, right? How weather can impact us in such a quick way.
Absolutely.
I mean, and it's important. You mentioned about the guy who, tragically lost his life. That is why we keep saying in these moments, if you see it, please turn around. Yeah. It is not worth the risk, even if you think you may be able to go through it, make your way through it. I don't know what kind of vehicle you might have. You just hate to see that and to
just takes a little bit of moving
That's
water to move a car. So that's very important. I think it's also significant to note, we spent so much time talking about Hurricane Helene and its impacts on some of the western portions of North Carolina and the recovery efforts around Asheville. My wife and I got there for the Thanksgiving holiday, and there were still areas that are still working just to recover. A lot of their infrastructure starting to come back. But these recoveries, they're not just weeks, in some cases months or even longer. Again, Helene, it's been a year and they're still working. There were crews literally staying at the campground where we were, that was their temporary housing while they were out working on the infrastructure. And that was, a year after Helene, a year plus. In the Pacific Northwest, some of these areas that have been hit, we had reports of flooding back in Montana. These are rural areas that aren't as easily accessible. You think about Seattle, Tacoma, that's very populated. There's a lot of different resources there to help get those areas back up pretty quickly. But when you get into some of these more remote areas, it's hard to move equipment and to get all the crews there to take care of everything. And I know that they've got crews working around the clock there. I don't know if you guys are interested. I had set up some of the medium range guidance here, and I'll just mention, we can revisit this if you want. A little bit of rain down along the Gulf Coast as well. But I wanted to show you the rain chances coming up over the remainder of this week. And you can see in the Northwest here, if we want to take this map full, Sarah, you can take a look. This I set up to show you travel conditions heading towards the holiday, Christmas time period leading up to that. This is the European model. But what you also see when we take a look at this, we can talk about what happens here on the East Coast, but look at the Northwest. More wet weather there as that, moisture continues to stream in to that part of the country. And that's through late Thursday. So again, while today there may be some breaks you can see, later tomorrow, Oregon really getting hit with some more heavy rain. Now here on the East Coast, there's going to be rain that develops, and that's going to come into play tomorrow night through early Friday. You see that coming through. So if you've got travel plans up and down the East Coast, you're going to find the wet weather early Friday. By midday Friday, Southeast is clearing. The Northeast still wet and snow across parts of Pennsylvania and New York State. But then you look back to California, and remember how I showed on Thursday that flooding threat, excessive for Oregon. There you go. California, you can see Northern California set to get hit with more. Then as we head into the weekend, a little bit of a break. Certainly good here on the East Coast. Temperatures coming down a little bit. But look at the Northwest and the Western U.S. More moisture. They just can't get a break. I mean, it's system after system. So it's a pretty stagnant pattern with that wet weather. Looks like an area of low pressure spinning offshore from the northwest, bringing more moisture into the region, and then snow for the higher elevations. We do have a chance for a couple of showers. I'll just mention that was a little modification to the forecast that I made during daybreak this morning. I introduced a few more showers later Tuesday. So if you're traveling, maybe you're headed up to northern parts of Virginia, you might see a few showers up that way Tuesday if you've got a short work week. And then as we head towards Christmas, we should be drier, although there might be a few showers north into Maryland. So,
Craig, I appreciate
going on.
a lot going on right now. And I was going to say there's a lot going on, too, on our big board. We have things popping up straight happening right now. And so we wanted to bring you in to talk about that. But I think right now we are going to kind of transition to some of the other things going on. Let's first hear, we have Democratic caucus members right now with Nancy Pelosi speaking from the podium. This as we are expecting to not only hear a debate, but also a vote on a GOP healthcare plan today in the House. Let's listen to what they're saying, and we're going to continue to bounce back and forth throughout today, Sarah, but let's start there.
Perhaps our colleagues on the floor have either ignored that or don't care about that, and now we have the 218 votes, and now it's up to the Speaker to follow the rules of the House and not abandon us on the time frame. We want it now. We want it, and we want it now. We want it now. Again, this is so women will lose access to essential services. Working families will lose financial security. And again, parents will be one diagnosis away from possible bankruptcy. But more important than that, the confidence they have that they can provide for their children, for their families. This comes right down to the kitchen table of America's working families. We hear you there. You want to talk about affordability. Affordability of health care is really one of the main issues that is so upsetting to America's families. We have an answer. We have the votes. Bring it to the floor. And thank you to the Women's Caucus for their leadership on this, and with respect to our distinguished leader, Mr. Hakeem Jeffries, for bringing that important discharge petition. Now, just for the public knows, when there's a discharge petition and you get 218 votes, which is the majority of the House Democrats, then the bill comes to the floor. We want no obstacles. We want action. Now it's my pleasure to yield to a fighter for women's maternal health and health care in general for all, come from a state that has been in the lead in health care. We learned a lot from Hawaii, and we're very honored to serve with Joyce Takuda, whom I'm happy to yield to.
I'm here. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Aloha, everyone. And Amelia, I got to tell you, not many people, oh, she's right there. Amelia just literally took my script and ripped it up because it was 2 pages of how we've got to get shit done today for the American people. And it looks like we have. I want to remind you that women, mothers, caregivers, upholders of our community, we're here in what could be considered the 11th hour of this Congress. And we are still fighting like hell to make sure they get their hands off our health care and they reprioritize what is right. And that is extending the Affordable Care Act, premium enhanced tax credits, making sure that we can continue to make health care affordable for millions of Americans across this country, including in my very rural and remote home state of Hawaii. You know, my colleague was just clinching me as we got the news of 218, 219. Rashida was like, women change.
Healthcare, the big conversation today in Washington, D.C., as you see there, members of our Democratic lawmakers there, mainly within the House, who are talking about women's health care policies. This as the GOP health care plan is supposed to be debated and potentially voted on today on the floor. Right now, we want to pivot to the state of Georgia, where we have Fani Lewis, Fulton County's Democratic District Attorney, is now being questioned by Georgia Senate leaders, state leaders there. This after the prosecution attempt on Donald Trump and 18 others the law actually, the actual crime she put it for was anti-racketeering, but this was the indictment that came against the now president back in 2023, alleging a conspiracy to try to illegally overturn his loss to Democrat Joe Biden back in 2020 in that presidential election. She's now answering questions, that you can see, as Georgia Republican senators are now questioning her about that prosecution.
At the best and the brightest representing Fulton County, and that this community stayed safe. And every person who did it for free.
Thank you. Part of one of the things you did when you came into office was you formed this new anti-corruption unit. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Can you walk us through the decision process to stand that unit up, if that replaced any other units, and who was a part of that unit once it was stood up?
And I'm actually not sure we called it the anti-corruption unit when we first took over. So when I became the district attorney, Paul Howard had 101 police brutality cases, many that went back to years, maybe to 2009. People in the community were very upset. It was both unfair to the law enforcement officers and to the community that decisions were not made. And so I knew that one of the things that I was going to have to do was to make sure that every case got looked at and was evaluated. And so I was looking for attorneys to do that. I'm not sure if that's what we called it at first, because I think we called it the Civil Rights Unit, in fact. When we first opened it, I think it was the Civil Rights Unit. At some point, I go to visit other huge district attorneys' offices that have kind of the same kind of struggles that I have as a major metro area. I went to visit the Houston District Attorney's Office at that time, and in that office they had divided cases, and I thought it was a brilliant way to do business. And so I think that's the point that I then formed a civil rights unit, which would only deal with police brutality, and an anti-corruption unit. So I think when we first started that it was called the Civil Rights Unit.
Okay, how many people were part of that unit once you got it fully operational?
Well, it depends. The county has, in my opinion, stolen people from me, so we can't do the job as effectively as needs to be done. I've had as many as, it varies. It has varied because we had an anti-corruption unit and a civil rights unit, so it's varied.
Can you give us a range?
It really depends on who you're calling the anti-corruption unit. I've probably not had more than 2 lawyers in that unit, maybe 3 at any given time, an investigator or 2, and a legal assistant. They may have been doing double duty somewhere else.
And you entered into a contract with Chris Campbell to do some taint work as a part of that unit, is that correct?
We're going to come back to that. We're going to continue to monitor it. But right now we have the governor of North Carolina, Josh Stein, who just walked up to a podium for a speech as well. So we want to go ahead and go to him and see what he is talking about. This is happening in Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
To be able to take care of their business quickly and efficiently and get on with their day. That's what we want. That's what I want. That's what you want. So I want to use this chance to lift up some of the work that Commissioner Tyne and the whole DMV team have been doing to move us closer to that goal, to get us where we want, where people come in, take care of the business, go out, and go on with their day. Last month, the DMV released its updated 5-year strategic plan and its updated staffing plan. These plans are guiding the organization toward becoming an exceptional customer service organization. We're already seeing a number of small wins that are smoothing out people's DMV experiences. Just this fall, I signed a piece of legislation, Senate Bill 245, which enables more people to get their license renewed online. In just 2 months, 80,000 North Carolinians have taken advantage of that. That's 80,000 people who before had to go to a DMV office and get in line with all the other people, slowing everybody down. Now those people take care of their business at home. They're happy because it's easier on them. And how about the people who did have to go to the office? They're happy they're not waiting behind 80,000 people in front of them. It was a good move. This graduating class, you are another testament to our combined efforts. 64 positions were authorized, new positions, in addition to the ones we already had with the DMV, were authorized by another bipartisan piece of legislation, House Bill 125. I signed that into law in August. That created 64 new positions. Those 64 positions, I don't know which one of you are in those positions, but you're here, in addition to some already existing positions. The point is that the folks at DMV have been working hard. They had the same number of people for I don't know how many years as our state went from 7 million people to 8 million people to 9 million. We're 11 million people. We cannot have the same number of staff serving that many more people. We had to have you all grow as the population has grown. And you may not realize this because this was your first training and you successfully accomplished it, but your training was different than what other trainings in the past have been. It was both more efficient and better tailored to meet the needs of the job than previous versions. So what we've done is shrunk the timeline from the time when you are hired to the time when you can get on the job. Again, that's good because the more you're on the job in the office at your desk, the more people who come into that office who can get served. We have a long way to go. We know this. We're not done yet, but there has been a great deal of progress. Strengthening Team DMV is a team effort. We've got a great Team DMV, and I want to thank the General Assembly for its partnership, for helping us to make it even greater. I want to thank Commissioner Tyne for his leadership. I want to thank the many DMV employees already on the team who are working hard every day. And boy,
Okay, we're going to pivot from North Carolina. We're going to go back to Washington, D.C., where right now a Senate committee is holding a hearing with FCC Chair Brendan Carr. This is the Federal Communications Commission. This will be the first time that he's facing questioning after the Trump administration began targeting public broadcasters and the media, including, if you recall, the pressure on ABC to take late-night host Jimmy Kimmel off the air earlier this year following his comments on the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk, with Kimmel recently also renewing a deal, by the way. It has drawn some criticism when it comes to freedom of speech and concerns of that within the administration and the FCC. Brendan Carr was also outspoken during that time against Kimmel. So let's go ahead and listen in on this hearing that is taking place. Again, this is a Senate committee.
Unleashing our nation's construction crews by advancing several core goals. For one, we're modernizing permitting rules and cutting red tape. For another, we're freeing up the airwaves that are necessary for America to lead the world again. Indeed, we now have a massive new spectrum pipeline and are working on multiple new spectrum auctions. In fact, the FCC just voted on a proposal to auction up to 180 megahertz in the upper C-band. For still another, we're boosting America's space economy, and in all of this, we're already seeing results. One carrier alone just announced that they lit up spectrum they gained access to this year to over 23,000 cell sites in record time, boosting 5G speeds by up to 80%. President Trump and the FCC's build agenda are also delivering for America's workers. Providers are now adopting faster payment cycles and fairer pricing. They're closing loopholes that allowed foreign groups to swoop in and undercut U.S. workers, and they're improving safety. Finally, the FCC is now pursuing the largest deregulatory effort in the agency's history. To date, we've teed up for removal over 1,000 rules or regulations and terminated a record 2,000 inactive proceedings. Eliminating those costly regulations is part of our affordability work, too. For instance, we shut down a Biden-era plan that could have spiked the price of internet for millions of Americans living in apartments by up to 50%. And in many ways, we're just getting started. I look forward to continuing to deliver on this important agenda. And in closing, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to testify. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Trusty.
Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. It has been nearly 6 months since I was sworn in as a commissioner at the Federal Communications Commission. In that time, I've had the privilege of working on policies to expand access to high-speed connectivity, enhance the resilience of the nation's communications networks, and restore U.S. leadership in next-generation communications technologies. Critical to my work has been the opportunity to travel across the country and around the world to hear directly from broadband providers, tower engineers, fiber splicers, consumers, and our international partners and allies. Whether in Jackson, Mississippi, Ek, Alaska, or Baku, Azerbaijan, I heard about the state of the communications marketplace and how access to fixed, mobile, and satellite connectivity is delivering on the promise of job creation, technological innovation, and economic prosperity. In Jackson, Mississippi, I saw how broadband is delivering quality, life-saving care straight into the homes of Mississippians across the Magnolia State. Doctors at the University of Mississippi Medical Center are treating chronic illnesses, managing high-risk pregnancies, and delivering mental health care by video to rural communities that would otherwise go without these essential services. In Bethel and Ek, Alaska, I saw how access to broadband is transforming lives. These Alaskan towns are home to some of the most rugged and hard-to-reach terrain, and broadband is enabling Alaska natives and non-natives alike to contribute to and benefit from the global digital economy while maintaining their treasured culture and way of life. And this fall, I traveled to Baku, Azerbaijan, to represent the United States at the International Telecommunication Union's World Telecommunication Development Conference. There, ministers and regulators from around the globe highlighted their progress on closing the digital divide within their nation's borders. They also used this forum to seek U.S. guidance and leadership on maximizing spectrum efficiency, building trusted networks and secure supply chains, and creating a regulatory environment that invites continued innovation, investment, and competition while protecting consumers and enhancing public safety. These are issues we confront at the FCC in almost every proceeding. They also inform the 3 priorities guiding my work: universal connectivity, network resilience, and U.S. leadership. Ensuring that every American has access to communication services has been the FCC's core mission since its founding. Following my confirmation, the Supreme Court affirmed the constitutionality of the Universal Service Fund. I commend the bipartisan, bicameral Congressional USF Working Group for taking the initiative to identify reforms to ensure the program's sustainability and continued support for the operation and maintenance of communications networks in rural and remote areas. In an era of growing digital hostility, however, achieving universal connectivity requires increased focus on the deployment of trusted and resilient network infrastructure. Our communications networks are the backbone of both our economy and our defense. From robocall scams to foreign-made network components to infrastructure vandalism and copper theft, the threats are evolving rapidly. Recent Commission actions to remove foreign adversary-owned labs from our equipment authorization process, to block illegal robocalls from exploiting American consumers, and to garner commitments from broadband providers to harden their network infrastructure will enhance network integrity while allowing us to maintain agility in responding to new and emerging threats. U.S. leadership in next-generation technologies, 6G, AI, emerging commercial services in space, and more hinges on our ability to deploy high-speed and resilient communications infrastructure to every corner of the country. Thanks to President Trump and the leadership of Chairman Cruz and the members of this committee, the Commission's General Spectrum Auction Authority has been restored, along with the creation of a long-term spectrum pipeline. This positions America to lead in wireless innovation and beyond. Our continued success in technological advancement will ultimately be determined by a domestic and international regulatory environment that emphasizes innovation, competition, and global cooperation. Importantly, U.S. leadership isn't inevitable. It must be earned. I look forward to working with members of this committee and our interagency partners to ensure the United States is positioned to capture first-mover advantages in the technologies that will define the future of our economic and national security. Mr. Chairman, thank you again for this opportunity to testify. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Gomez.
Thank you. Chairman Cruz, Ranking Member Cantwell, and the distinguished members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. As Commissioner, my priorities have centered on expanding reliable and affordable connectivity to every community, maintaining U.S. leadership through smart spectrum policy, preserving localism in a vibrant media ecosystem, and ensuring first responders have the tools they need to reach the public when it matters most. These priorities reflect long-standing bipartisan goals, and they are the areas where I had hoped we would be spending our time and energy with a shared commitment to serving consumers. Instead, over the past 10 months, the Commission has taken a markedly different approach, one that has undermined its reputation as a stable, independent, and expert-driven regulatory body. Nowhere is that departure more concerning than in its actions to intimidate government critics, pressure media companies, and challenge the boundaries of the First Amendment. It is precisely because of these concerns that I launched a First Amendment tour earlier this year, traveling across the country to hear directly from communities. My goal was simple: to listen, engage, and to reaffirm that the FCC's work must remain grounded in constitutional principles and public trust. And I have found myself aligned with voices across the ideological spectrum, united by a shared belief that the First Amendment is fundamental to our democracy and worth defending, even when doing so is politically inconvenient. In that spirit, I want to thank Chairman Cruz for speaking out in defense of the First Amendment and for his continued engagement on this critical issue. One thing I learned during these conversations is that when the FCC strays from its core mission, consumers pay the price. That reality results in higher costs, fewer voices and choices, and missed opportunities to expand access across communications ecosystems. One clear example of where Congress and the Commission have been aligned is spectrum policy. I want to thank Congress for restoring our spectrum auction authority. This is an important step toward expanding capacity, promoting competition, and maintaining U.S. leadership in wireless innovation. When spectrum policy is done properly, it lowers costs for consumers and it fuels economic growth. Yet spectrum is only part of the story. Millions of households have faced rising broadband costs following the lapse of the Affordable Connectivity Program, with little action from the Commission focused on affordability or consumer relief. These missed opportunities reflect a troubling lack of focus on the everyday challenges consumers face in accessing and affording essential communication services. Beyond missed opportunities, the FCC has taken affirmative actions that have raised costs and reduced the choice for consumers. FCC actions contributed to the loss of a potential fourth competitor on national wireless front, weakening competition and increasing the risk of higher prices. At the same time, the Commission reversed the work it had previously done under congressional mandate to lower the cost of prison communications and chose to increase the cost of phone and video calls, leaving some of the most vulnerable families paying excessive rates to stay connected with loved ones. These affordability concerns are especially acute in the media landscape. The FCC has advanced plans that would allow billion-dollar media companies to grow even larger at the expense of local news and community-driven reporting. This push comes at a time when major media companies are already consolidating across broadcasting, streaming, and content production, raising serious questions about market power, editorial independence, and the future of community-based journalism. The national television ownership cap is established by law and reflects Congress's judgment about the importance of competition, localism, and viewpoint diversity. Efforts to sidestep that statutory limit present significant issues concerning the scope of the FCC's authority and the consequences for those it regulates and serves. Whether in broadcasting or streaming, media consolidation should not erode the independence of the press or diminish the voices of local communities. I've always believed that the FCC does its best work when it honors the needs of the people it serves. When the agency focuses on lowering costs, expanding opportunity, and protecting the ability of communities to communicate and to be heard, it builds public trust and produces real benefits for consumers. I look forward to working with this committee to ensure the FCC returns to that mission and continues to serve the American people with integrity and independence. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you to each of you. Chairman Carr, let's start with free speech. I think you would agree that the FCC's public interest standard has been weaponized against conservatives in the past. In 2018, Senate Democrats tried to pressure the FCC to use the public interest standard to stop Sinclair Broadcasting Group from acquiring Tribune Media. In 2023, leftists sought to stop a routine renewal of a Fox-owned broadcast station over complaints about 2020 election coverage. Do you agree that that was wrong?
Yes, Senator, I agree. And those are cases, in fact, where rather than following FCC precedent, the agency broke from it and did so in a weaponized way.
Now, another area of agreement between you and I is that Jimmy Kimmel is angry, overtly partisan, and profoundly unfunny. That, sadly, is true for most late-night comedians today who seem to have been collectively broken by President Trump's election. Jimmy's remarks about Charlie Kirk were tasteless, and ABC and its affiliates would have been fully within their rights to fire him or simply to no longer air his program. That was their choice. But what government cannot do is force private entities to take actions that the government cannot take directly. Government officials threatening adverse consequences for disfavored content is an unconstitutional coercion that chills protected speech. This is why it was so insidious how the Biden administration jawboned social media into shutting down conservatives online over accurate information on COVID or voter fraud. My Democrat colleagues were persistently silent over that scandal, but I welcome them now having discovered the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights. Democrat or Republican, we cannot have the government arbitrating truth or opinion. Mr. Chairman, my question is this. So long as there is a public interest standard, shouldn't it be understood to encompass robust First Amendment protections to ensure that the FCC cannot use it to chill speech?
Yes, Senator, I agree with you there. And I think the examples you laid out of weaponization during the Biden years are perfect examples. The Fox case you mentioned was a renewal for a broadcast TV license, and petitioners sought to have the FCC not renew it based on content that aired on a separate cable channel. In the cable context, it's entirely different. There's no license, there's no public interest standard. So first and foremost, we have to make sure the FCC is hewing to precedent. Similarly, we saw Democrats in Congress write letters to cable companies pressuring them to drop Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax because they disagreed with the political perspectives of those cable channels. And there, again, it was cable. No broadcast license, no public interest standard. So the FCC has to write within the four corners of our precedents to be consistent with the Communications Act and the First Amendment concerns as well.
All right, let's shift to spectrum. One of the biggest economic and national security wins in the Working Families Tax Cut Act was restoring the FCC's auction authority and creating the largest spectrum pipeline, 800 megahertz of spectrum, in U.S. history. It won't just bring faster and cheaper wireless to consumers, but it will keep the United States competitive in the global 6G race against Communist China. I'm encouraged that the FCC has already begun the process of freeing up potentially as much as 180 megahertz of C-band spectrum. Chairman Carr, is the Commission on track to meet the law's spectrum deadlines and to fully deliver on the bill's obligations?
Yes, Senator. And again, thank you to you for restoring the FCC's auction authority. We had fallen into a deep spectrum malaise during the Biden years. We were losing our leadership position. Right now, we're very actively working with our partners across government, Department of Transportation, FAA, NTIA, and we're all aligned to deliver on the statutory deadline of July 2027 for that auction.
And what will the benefits to consumers be of 800 megahertz of spectrum being made available for auction for the private sector?
First of all, this will allow us to catch back up to China. When President Trump left at the end of his Trump 45 administration, we had leapfrogged China and were set up in a very good position. But then we didn't move forward with any new spectrum bands, and China moved ahead. So this is important for national security, but also for prices for consumers. The data shows when we free up more spectrum, we can allow providers, for instance, to compete for in-home broadband. And when they do that with fixed wireless, we've seen that cable modem prices drop by 37% where they used to have a monopoly. So it's good for our economy, for innovation, and for prices for consumers as well.
Commissioner Trusty, how does the spectrum auction pipeline and the Working Families Tax Cut help position the United States for success at the 2027 World Radio Conference?
Yes, thank you so much for the question, Senator, and thank you again for your leadership in restoring the FCC's General Spectrum Auction Authority and creating this long-term spectrum pipeline. I think these spectrum provisions are foundational to developing a unified strategy going into the next World Radio Communications Conference, where we can focus on key U.S. interests. We can work with our international allies in advance to preempt those who are seeking to undermine U.S. interests at the conference in Shanghai, China. In 2023, at the last World Radio Communications Conference, we didn't have this kind of legislative backing or support. We didn't have auction authority. We didn't have a long-term spectrum pipeline, and so we were sidelined on very important conversations. Now that we have this authority, thanks to your leadership, we can constructively and meaningfully engage in these conversations that I think position us better to come out of this conference with wins that are essential for our economic and national security and global leadership in next-generation communications technologies.
Terrific. Thank you. Ranking Member Cantwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Carr, Chairman Carr, obviously, Salt Typhoon was a major attack on the United States infrastructure, government espionage by them, specifically exploiting the wiretap system built by law enforcement to track millions of Americans, their location, real-time phone calls, text messages, and according to senior officials, breached largely because the telecom companies didn't implement basic cybersecurity measures, like not putting a patch in place or router vulnerabilities. At the beginning of the year, the FCC issued a ruling to hold the FCC companies accountable, but the FCC rolled that back last month. So are these Chinese hackers still in the American telecom system?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I agree with you that the Salt Typhoon incident should never have been allowed to happen. At the beginning of the year, the Biden administration put forward a declaratory ruling, but no rules themselves were adopted at the time, and the FCC's decision itself didn't go through the agency's normal review process. When I spoke with the career Intel officials then, they were urging me not to move forward with a rulemaking, but instead to work collaboratively and directly with the carriers to make sure they were taking real-time actions to address and remediate. In fact, that's what we've been doing. We've worked directly with the carriers.
Do you think there's still hackers in the system?
Well, recently, over the summer, the FBI's cyber director, I'll refer you to his remarks that are very specific on this, and the cyber director for the FBI said that the hackers behind Salt Typhoon are, quote, largely contained in, quote, dormant in the networks, that they're not actively infiltrating information. So I'd, again, refer you to sort of the FBI, which is the lead spokesperson on this issue. But we've done.
I mean, I know what the FBI and CISA recommended. They said that you should use Signal, that everybody in America should get off of these systems and use other messaging services that had encrypted calling. So I don't think this issue is solved, and I think rolling back the rules that protect Americans, I think in this information age, you need to have robust security measures, and you need to make sure that the telecom industry is implementing them. Otherwise, we will continue to have these kind of hacks on the system. And so I don't agree with the rolling back of these issues. I do want to bring up a second issue, which is on cost. And Ms. Gomez, you articulated this as it related to EchoStar Dish, I think, but I think it's bigger than that. We're seeing this massive amount of consolidation in the marketplace. I think we have a chart back here. Somebody could just hold it up for a second about how, we pay the most in wireless costs. We pay our second in the world. The most or second most in broadband cost writ large. And so the question is, what are we going to do to drive down costs for consumers, and how are these consolidations basically making it more challenging for us to give consumers real choice in the marketplace without cost. And while I love Spectrum and I want good international competition, I'm more impressive with Spectrum that doesn't interfere with DoD. I'm more impressed with Spectrum that basically helps expand into rural areas and drives down costs, and more impressed with a Spectrum policy that basically takes that low end of the market that doesn't have affordable costs and basically does something to help them participate in the market. Why give more spectrum if the telecom companies float and decide not to do the rules on security and then just become basically richer while the American consumer becomes poorer? And again, this is just one example of how the United States is one of the most expensive in the country. But could you help explain a little more on your thoughts about what we do to increase competition and lower costs?
Thank you, Senator. I'm a firm believer that robust competition results in benefits for consumers, including lower costs. And I am concerned that the level of consolidation in this country is actually reducing the incentives that lead to lower costs for consumers. And since you raised affordability, I'm so glad you raised that, because one of the things that I'm very concerned about is the lack of a program to provide affordable access to connectivity for consumers throughout this country. We are spending billions of dollars in order to deploy networks in the hardest to reach areas, but we're not going to make sure that they are sustainable if people can't afford to actually purchase that service.
Well,
So
isn't that what's been wrong with spectrum policy writ large? Is we sell the spectrum, we give it to the telco industry. They basically expand to the areas that they can have customers, but not to the hard to serve areas, or figuring out a price point that will allow them to deliver a service so we can expand to the whatever it is 20 million Americans that don't have broadband.
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, it's an incentive, your economic incentive is where the profits are. So that's where government steps in.
Well, I don't think that's where the FCC is stepping in. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our commissioners for being here today. Congress codified the Universal Service Mission 3 decades ago. It has been a fundamental building block in providing reliable communications and internet across this country, and in the hardest to reach places. However, communications in the 90s looked a lot different than they do in 2025. Chairman Carr, given this reality and ongoing legal challenges to the fund, would you agree that Congress has a vital role in modernizing the USF?
Thank you, Senator, and thanks for your longtime leadership on these universal service issues. I've enjoyed the chance to visit with you in your state and see the important work that the Universal Service Program has done. I commend the working group that's ongoing in the Senate looking at this issue, and I think you're right. I think it's time for Congress to take a fundamental look at the program to make sure it's fit for service in the coming years.
And Commissioner Trustee and Gomez, do you have anything you'd like to add to that? Commissioner Trustee.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I agree. Thank you for your leadership on these issues. You've been a long time leader on making sure we can meet connectivity needs in these areas. I do agree that reforms for USF are very important. This is the cornerstone of the FCC's mission in connecting Americans across the country, and USF is a part of that effort.
And Senator Gomez, anything to add? Any comments about reforms?
Yes, thank you, Senator. And again, also thank you for yours and Senator Lujan's leadership on this issue. I think it's very important for the Senate to help us to make the Universal Service Fund a sustainable program that ensures affordable access for all Americans. And I'm really hopeful that what you are able to provide is that sustainable affordability program as part of your as the reforms that you put forward.
Thank you. As co-chair of the working group, I sent the commission a letter with Senator Lujan earlier today, and it requests a briefing to help inform Congress's efforts in this regard. Chairman Carr, will you commit to getting a briefing on the books in January for our staff and the appropriate commission personnel?
Yes, I look forward to working with you on this issue.
Great, thank you. The U.S. role in shaping global communications policy is vital for countering foreign threats to our networks and all the assets that they connect, and adding to An element to this challenge is the upcoming World Radio Communication Conference that will take place in China. Commissioner Trustee, what will be the biggest risks that this adds to a complex process?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think security is the business risk that adds to this process. And as you know, we're working at the FCC to ensure.
Okay, as promised, we're going to bounce back and forth today because there are several things happening at the same time. Let's head back to a different hearing, this one in Georgia. Again, we have Fulton County DA Fani Willis, who is being grilled by state senators there on her prosecution of Donald Trump and others into election interference in 2020. Here we go.
What would be the process, as you understand, in your office to determine what fund a invoice is paid from?
You're in the weeds, and I don't know the answer.
Okay. We've already talked about the selection of the special SADAs, special assistant district attorneys. I may use those interchangeably. The process of interviewing Governor Barnes, among some other folks, ultimately settling on Mr. Wade.
Well, I don't want you to act like he was,
Well, after just talking to 2 or 3 people, I think, to be fair, I don't think I'm not saying it's the bottom of the...
He's a lawyer, been practicing law 25 years.
Sure. What was the reason that you chose to use, and I think if you could just unpack this for us a little bit more, that you chose to use a special assistant DA at the rate of $250 an hour versus using the attorneys that were already in your office or hiring additional attorneys at a rate that you referenced earlier is between, I think you said, between $85,000 and $200,000 a year?
Because we were drowning, and each of so most of the lawyers I had in the office wouldn't be qualified to do that work, most of them. I had some that were qualified to do that work, but each of them had a major project. Let me use those 2 cases that mattered most to me. Kennedy Maxey and Sequoia Turner. I was determined we were going to win those cases. So on day 1, those cases got handed to Ms. Dacia Young. In addition to handing her that, because nobody has one job, I handed her the Special Victims Division, at which time had like 8 units. So she's doing both these 2 big cases, and she's over the entire Special Victims Division. Same thing with Mr. Carlson, very qualified lawyer, but I handed him 6 units, and I also told him, you gonna get rid of these 250 or so murders that we have. We're gonna do a project, we're gonna set it up, we're gonna go one by one. So every lawyer I had with that level of experience had a huge project. I assigned a lawyer to deal with the 18,000 backlog. I don't wanna be sitting here and, it took us, I think, 3 years to get through those, as well as keep up with the 46,000 cases that end up coming in my first term. So everyone had some. So it became obvious to me that I needed a lawyer that could manage this team while I did the rest of the work of the people.
And there was nobody else, either internal or that you could have hired at a lower rate that you just described?
A lower rate than $250? It's an insult to take $250 for a lawyer that's been practicing law that long.
I thought you told me earlier that your range of people that work for you are between 85, not dollars an hour, but $85,000 a year and $200,000 a year.
Yeah, but $85,000 is like one domestic violence grant. I usually only hire someone with 3 years of experience. I make an exception with that because that's, an offensive salary. Although I can tell you, I think the state is paying lawyers $64,000. I mean, it's ridiculous. I know a little girl just graduated Georgetown Law, and she's making $280,000, $300,000 a year. We do not take public service seriously, and we need to, because my lawyers do greater work than most of these lawyers in this civil firm.
And let me point out one thing. You're using gross amounts. That doesn't include
benefits,
the perks, the health insurance, and all that stuff, which Wade did not have.
Sure. So describe for me the experience level of your top paid, or somebody that would fall within the category of the top paid assistant district attorney that works for you at the $200,000 a year. And to Governor Barnes's point, plus benefits, let's just say that's $250. And if I take that divided by 2,000 hours, that's about $125 an hour.
I don't understand the question.
My question is, what is the experience level of the assistant district attorneys.
Are you
in your
trying to
office.
intimate that you're going to tell me who to hire and how to do my job?
No, ma'am. I'm asking you, the people, the wonderful people that you have hired, they're the top of your pay scale at $200,000 a year. What is their experience level? Because I'll let you answer that, and I'll ask my next question.
20 years practicing or
Okay.
more.
And it's your testimony that somebody with 20 years practicing or more would not be able to manage the election interference case?
You are really not listening. I said that I had people at that pay rate, and each of them was assigned a major task within my office. And no, I did not have anyone that was not assigned with a major task that I trusted to manage this case. And so I made a decision. The people of Fulton County elected me to make that decision, and I did.
Is there a reason why you decided to go the special assistant district attorney route via independent contractor as opposed to a new full-time hire?
I think it's asked and answered, sir.
Okay.
Because it was cheap. You don't have to pay the perks.
Governor, I'm happy for you to provide counsel to your client, but in terms of testimony, that's what the district attorney is here for today.
Well,
Can you describe?
Give you fair notice. I'm not going to allow her to answer repetitive questions that have been answered time and time again.
Were there any internal policies that you had that kind of drew a line between when you would use your internal staff versus hiring a special assistant district attorney, or was it more so based on workload like you described?
It was based on my decisions.
Okay. At its peak, how many total attorneys were working on the election interference case?
Maybe 9, approximately.
You referenced a Mr. Cross before. I believe that's a.
Who?
I believe you referenced a Mr. Cross before.
I don't know Mr. Cross.
A couple of minutes ago. Ms. Cross, I apologize.
What about him?
Her.
Who are you talking about?
Miss Anna Cross.
I never referenced Miss Anna Cross.
I believe you referenced Ms. Cross when we were going through.
I didn't read back the testimony.
Can you give me the breakdown of the total attorneys that were on the case? How many of those were full-time within your office, and how many of those were independent contractors?
I believe I had 3 independent contractors.
One of those being Mr. Wade. Who were the other 2?
John Floyd, Anna Cross. Diversity, white male, white female, black male. Diversity is intentional.
What kind of experience do you look for in those special assistant district attorneys?
They're all amazing lawyers. John Floyd is the RICO expert. He wrote the book, literally. He taught me RICO. So that was his experience. He's not he's not necessarily going to be the trial prosecutor, but he certainly is great to help you put together an indictment, and he is certainly capable of questioning a witness, but that was not his forte. Ms. Cross is a brilliant mind. She writes beautifully, and is very well versed in the law. I had worked for a prosecutor in the past, so I looked for smart people with integrity that could do the work. And I got 3 lawyers, each that God put in different skin, that could do the work.
Thank you for giving us Ms. Cross's background, the rest of those as well. Has Mr. Wade ever prosecuted a RICO case prior to the election interference case?
Mr. Wade certainly was served as a prosecutor before this. He also has worked as a criminal defense attorney. And I believe he has defended RICO cases.
But as far as you know, he had not prosecuted.
I didn't need him for that. That's why I get to make the selection and not you.
Has he ever prosecuted any felonies? I know you referenced him prosecuting cases. It's my understanding that this was the first felony case that he was on the prosecutor side for. Is that accurate?
I'm not sure if that's accurate. I believe he did some work for the Attorney General, although the Attorney General never tries as many cases as my office.
Want to talk
but
about?
different people are needed for different things. And the people of Fulton County elected me to make those decisions. And I know y'all want to come in and be daddy and create QAnon committees that will judge prosecutors and have these committees. But unfortunately for you, I won this vote by 68% this time, 87 in the Democratic, 68 the general, 72% last time. So the people of Fulton County have selected me to make these choices, and I make them. And my city and county are safer because I make them.
In the in your prior testimony with Ms. Ashley Merchant, there was conversation around what she referred to as block billing. How would you describe block billing?
Oh, let's talk about Ms. Merchant.
Let's just talk about block billing, please.
We're not.
You've opened it now.
I've opened the question to block billing.
You know, the credibility of whoever's saying it is an issue.
Well, then let's just.
So I'd like to talk about what this committee did the last time we were here, and for the press, I will have 50 copies of this so each person can get a copy. You all, the last time y'all had a committee meeting, you all purported this lie that I had the honor of meeting Vice President Kamala Harris.
The question's
Me?
about block
No, I'm
billing,
going to
Madam
answer
Dia.
this question right now. And when you stated that, you stated that it was me and it was Mayor Dickens. And then you put this exhibit up for the entire world to see. How disingenuous, how lacking of integrity for Ms. Merchant as an attorney to put it up, and for Cowsert, who I noticed is cowardly not here, to have it here. This clearly says, I'm at a Black History Month project. Almost every important Black elected official across the country was invited to it. I'm on the lawn with a cocktail, and yet y'all tell the world I was sitting down with the vice president having a meeting. It was a damn lie. And this is the evidence of it. And y'all had the audacity to put it up on a screen as if you were showing something other than the DA was having a cocktail on the lawn. I have never even had the honor of meeting Vice President Kamala Harris. Never.
How would you define block billing?
Like somebody who didn't know what the hell they were talking about.
When I refer you to the screen, these are.
I don't review those documents, so you're asking me to look at documents that I haven't for the first time. What I can tell you is that I
I'll give
only
you time to
allowed
review the
Mr. Wade to
documents.
bill 160 hours a week, and then Mr. Wade would be the first one in the office making sure that my staff arrived. He corrected their behavior. They thought that 8:30 meant 8:30. He taught them that 8:30 means 7:45. He got there before them. He left after him. He taught them how to do this case, and he was a leader to that team and a public servant. And for that, him like me has been threatened thousands of times. You want something to investigate as a legislature? Investigate how many times they've called me the N-word. Why don't you investigate that? Why don't you investigate them writing on my house? Why don't you investigate the fact that my house has been swatted? If you want something to do with your time that makes sense, and you can use all this in your campaign ad, you attacked Fonnie Willis. What have you done, sir? Nothing.
So I'm going to refer you to the screen. I know you said you don't approve.
I don't look at this.
review
I've never
these
seen it,
bills.
so I can't talk to you about documents I don't approve and don't review. Can't talk to you about it.
Who does approve the documents in your office when invoices come in?
I thought we'd been through this.
I don't believe you said who reviews the invoices and approves the invoices in your office.
First of all, I have no firsthand knowledge of it.
You have no
You
firsthand
want me to
knowledge of.
testify about something I don't have any firsthand knowledge of?
I'm asking-
Are you asking me to speculate? Because I've clearly told you I don't have any firsthand knowledge of it, and I'm not going to speculate.
The question is, when an invoice comes into your office from a special assistant district attorney, what is the review process for that invoice before it's paid?
And she's answered this. She said she has a deputy of operations, and he reviews, or she reviews, and then it goes through the county. So it's a repetitive question.
What's the name of the deputy of operations?
The question has been asked and answered, and I believe it goes straight to the county, so I'm not sure. Dexter Bond.
Okay. Do you know who ATG may be, initials within your office?
I don't.
I would assume it is accurate to say it's probably not Dexter Bond.
I don't. It may be somebody at the county.
What we're looking at here are two bills that were paid by and approved by your department. The one on the left is from the Cross firm, which refers to Anna Cross that we referenced earlier. The one on the right is invoice number 11 from Nathan Wade. And the first thing
Let me tell you why this is such a
the
damn
first
joke.
thing that jumps out to me as a non-lawyer, but as someone who has paid lawyer bills before, and I believe this gets to the question, the question which was around block billing. And here's my question for you, Madam DA. Are there rules in your contracts or otherwise when you hire independent contractors that gets to the billing methodology for your attorneys? In other words, are they allowed to always bill to the even hour, or is there a professional expectation that they would bill to the 10th or
Let me tell you something. I had 3 attorneys working with me that had integrity. For you to insinuate that a judge that sat for 10 years and was the head of the magistrate court judges, that they did something illegal. They were underpaid. I have here documents where in one annual year, because I want you to remember his bills were over the course of 3 years. In one annual year made $8 million, made $5 million. And I'm going to make sure that the press has that so that when you're asking me about this great service to the state of Georgia, that it is understood that these are more than reasonable, actually bargain basement amounts. Ms. Cross would insist that I wrote government rate in her contract because she didn't want anyone to get confused that she would actually work for this rate, but for the fact that it was service to her community. So I don't know what we're talking about here, but to insinuate these 3 lawyers that have great integrity, have served this community well, did something unethical, I don't know why we're having this conversation.
I'm trying to.
I don't know anything about whatever you're talking about.
The state of Georgia allocates funding to your office.
They hire those 25 lawyers, yes.
And we are the questioning here is relative to the approval process of invoices that are paid by your office. You have testified that that is done by Dexter Bond, that you're unaware of who this ATG is that signed off on this. So we'll move on to a further line of questioning here.
You know, old men have to go to the bathroom about every hour.
Governor, would you like a 5-minute recess?
I believe it would.
We'll take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, you're hearing fireworks going off in that Georgia Senate hearing over Fani Willis, who is the Fulton County DA, over her prosecution of now President Trump and several others in the 2020 election case there out of Georgia. You can hear them questioning her about the way in which billing took place there during in her office right there in Fulton County, which is where the Atlanta area, obviously, for Georgia. Okay, so we're monitoring that as they're taking a brief moment of pause. And just in time, I was going to send us back to this committee for the U.S. Senate with FCC Chair Brennan Carr, but we're going to take a quick moment because it looks like we have members of the Democratic Party, I do believe, who are speaking now at the podium. We're going to head to them also in D.C. just briefly as they are talking about the GOP health care proposal expected to hit the House floor today.
Vote on this proposal today. We now know with certainty that the votes are there to ultimately ensure that these tax credits under the Affordable Care Act for working families across the United States don't expire before year's end. Speaker Johnson has a very simple choice to make. Does he send home the Republican Congress for the holidays and let these tax credits expire? Or does he do the right thing now that House Democrats and 4 of his own members have signed a discharge petition compelling a vote that would otherwise not ripen until early January? I and my colleagues here will continue to make the case that the Speaker ought to do the latter. He ought to call that vote today. Let the chips fall where they may, and let us work together to ultimately secure health care for millions of Americans. With that, I want to yield to my distinguished colleagues here who have joined us, each of whom are really professionals in every sense of the word, many of whom have served as physicians and understand the real stakes when it comes to this particular debate around the Affordable Care Act. And there is no one, in my view, who understands those stakes more clearly than my colleague, the distinguished gentlewoman from Illinois, a former nurse, Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, who serves as one of the co-chairs of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee.
Well, good morning, and thank you so much, Representative Neguse. Thank you all for joining us today. Today's one of my favorite days in Congress because today's a healthcare day. I'm so pleased to be able to be with you in such a critical moment. As you all know, I'm a registered nurse, and I'm joined by colleagues who, like myself, have made healthcare our life's work. We are just 15 days away from the expiration of life-changing, life-saving healthcare tax credits that have put affordable healthcare within reach for record-breaking numbers of American families. This healthcare crisis was created by this Republican majority through their own cruelty and neglect. In communities all over the country, working families are learning that their healthcare costs will rise to completely unaffordable levels. These are families who will be forced to make a choice between their mortgage payment or a doctor's visit, between taking a second or third job or spending more time at home with their kids. People will be sicker. They will not be able to see their providers. Families will be forced into bankruptcy, and our already strained healthcare system is about to be stretched even further. We are staring down a complete disaster, and I need everyone to understand that this is a choice. These incredibly popular tax credits come from my legislation, the Healthcare Affordability Act, and for months we have been calling on Republicans to make these savings permanent. But they chose to ignore the issue. They decided to ignore the pleas of our communities and working families around the country. And still, all year at every turn, we have offered solutions and a path forward for ending the crisis that they created. We fought ferociously to save healthcare for the American people. But we have some good news because we now have the signatures to force a vote on my bill to extend these tax credits for 3 years. This majority has waited far too long to address this issue, and some damage has already been done, right? Open enrollment has now ended. That deadline was on the 15th. But there's no reason to add to the uncertainty and the anxiety that the American people are facing. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has an opportunity to do the right thing today and call the vote. And certainly he should not be sending the Congress home without an opportunity to vote to extend these healthcare tax credits. We know the votes are there. It's just a matter of time. But why put the American people through more chaos, more uncertainty, more anxiety, more cruelty? Let's do it now. So I am really delighted to introduce my colleague, a great physician from California, Representative Raul Ruiz.
Thank you, Assistant Leader Joe Negus, for calling us together. I am extremely honored to be standing here in front of some amazing healthcare professionals. As you all know, Nurse Lauren Underwood is also a public health expert, and standing with Doctors Maxine Dexter and Doctors Kelly Morrison makes my heart jump with delight. I welcome them in their first term, and they're exceptional physicians who care so much about their patients that they're here in Congress fighting tooth and nail for their better health. Republicans created a healthcare crisis with the big ugly law. They cut nearly $1 trillion in Medicaid. They cut over $600 billion of aid to hospitals, long-term care facilities, community clinics. And then they cut food support for the most at-risk individuals in our country. This not only increases costs to those that are going to be cut from their Medicaid, but it increases costs for everybody. Because now you have 15 million people who are going to go uninsured and are going to be uncompensated care in your local emergency departments. These are 15 million people that are going to go without health care, and their preventative care, their chronic illnesses will get worse and will get more costly. And you're going to see a lot more comorbidities, a lot more pain and suffering in the American people. And now, on top of all of that, they fabricated an additional affordability crisis by actually refusing to extend the ACA enhanced premium tax credits. These tax credits make health care more affordable for millions of individuals and families across the country. But because of Republicans' deep-set grudge against the ACA, these tax credits are going away. But Republicans are actively choosing to put politics over people. Millions of Americans will soon be paying, in many cases, double what they used to for health care coverage or more. That's $18,000 a year for an individual on average that's 60 years old in my district. And after months of asking the Republicans to extend the affordable tax credits before they expire on December 31st deadline, they introduced a bill with 15 days left. A bill that will make healthcare costs more and worsen the healthcare affordability crisis. It's been 15 years since the ACA was passed, and they waited 15 days before the tax credits expire to introduce this bill. And this is the very best they could come up with. A bill that will leave millions without insurance and cause premiums to more than double for many Americans. Republicans have had 15 years to come up with another plan, explore ideas to make healthcare even more accessible and affordable for Americans, and their solution is to take away healthcare from more people and raise costs even more? This is ridiculous. Their solution is to create loopholes to circumvent the ACA's essential health benefits. Their solution is to push more consumers into these junk plans that don't cover essential health benefits. Their solution is to crack a backdoor abortion ban and strip women of the autonomy to make their own healthcare decisions, to allow these junk plans to discriminate against people with chronic health conditions. Are you kidding me? Their so-called Lower Healthcare Premiums for All Americans Act, which should be named the Making Healthcare More Costly and Worse Act, like its name, is nothing but thinly veiled deception. Just another example of Republicans trying to pull one over the American people, the people they swore an oath to serve. Now, we have a very immediate now solution that will put this to rest and give us time to work on lowering costs even further and to increase access to health care. And that solution was answered by 4 Republicans who signed the discharge petition to extend the Affordable Care Act for 3 years. It is now solely up to Speaker Mike Johnson, who has the decision and the authority to bring this bill up for a vote now and today, so that people don't have to pinch pennies before Christmas, so people don't have to go through the stress and anxiety during the holidays, so people don't have to suffer even more when they see their sticker shock with skyrocketing prices of their premiums. Today is the time for Speaker Johnson to bring this up for a vote. We have the amount of votes to pass this bill. Without a vote, the fault lies clearly on the shoulders of Speaker Johnson, who refuses to help lower costs for the American people, and instead, in order to benefit his billionaire buddies, wants to increase costs and take away the important protections that the Affordable Care Act has given the American people for so many years. And with that, I want to invite Representative Dr. Maxine Dexter up to the podium.
Okay, you're listening to Democrats there speaking about this Republican health care proposal set to hit the House floor today, and they're going through that now. We listened to House Speaker Mike Johnson speak about that just yesterday and what they have in that proposal. In it, it does not include, as you heard them say, those tax credit subsidies with the Affordable Care Act, which are set to expire come January 1st. And if so, when that happens, premiums will go up significantly for millions of Americans here in the country. It was a major sticking point for the record-breaking government shutdown. We know that lasted 43 years, and it did not come with a resolution when it comes to the healthcare subsidies. Now you have Republicans who are presenting their own proposal, but you heard there from that Democrat saying that they believe that they have the votes in the House to extend those tax credits. And we do know that there have been Republicans as well who have said that they would support an extension of those tax credits with some restrictions. Democrats have said they wanted to just get a 3-year extension on them. Either way, the deadline is coming up really quickly, and right now it is looking less and less likely that those subsidies will be extended, but there is still some time, okay? We're going to stick in Washington, D.C. now with another hearing that is taking place. This is before a Senate committee with FCC Chair Brendan Carr, who is being questioned on a number of different things, but in part about freedom of speech concerns that some have raised. So we're going to go right into that right now, and that hearing taking place.
Them should be beyond the reach of any government official not targeted by them, by government officials. Do you stand by that statement?
This was a letter written by House Democrats to cable companies, pressuring them to drop Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax simply because those Democrats thought they were right-wing.
Do you stand by your statement?
Yes, I do. I think that's inappropriate what the Democrats did there.
Good. I just want to get your own views out here on the record for people to hear. So in February, under your leadership, the Federal Communications Commission opened an investigation into a San Francisco radio station over its coverage of a federal immigration raid. A FCC investigation is a big deal for a local station. In a worst-case scenario, the FCC could shut down the station by revoking its license. In fact, you have repeatedly suggested over the past year that the FCC could revoke station licenses. Yet this investigation was based solely on the news content of the radio station's coverage of an immigration raid. I have the entire news statement that they put out that day. This happens every day, everywhere across the country for broadcast journalists. This investigation was based solely on this very brief statement that is in everyday coverage. And I have that transcript. And the anchor was literally reporting on the information that was released by the mayor, by the local city council member, and a community group. So you're telling me that reporting on statements from public officials and a community group is grounds for an FCC investigation?
Senator, the concern there in the report was that there may have been interference with lawful ICE operations, and so we were asking questions about what happened. This was a period of time, remember, when ICE agents were being attacked, their locations, undercover locations, were being disclosed.
There is nothing in here that discloses anything. There's no risk to anyone except—
And they can provide that to us.
No, the risk that it's posed here is to you, to the broadcast journalist coverage. That's what really happened. The news journalists were just covering an important news story. And some conservatives were upset by the coverage. So you use your power as FCC chair to hang a sword of Damocles over a local radio station's head. And that's precisely what you warned about in 2022, the government targeting a newsroom's editorial decision. Well, guess what happened? The station demoted the anchor who first read that news report over the air and pulled back on his political coverage. You got what you wanted. One former journalist at the station said, "Chilling effect does not begin to describe the neutering of our political coverage." That's what you wanted, that's what you got, but it affected stations everywhere. So just let me say again, the neutering of our political coverage, this is government censorship, plain and simple. Was it a mistake in retrospect for you to say that, to instigate an investigation of that San Francisco radio station? Was that a mistake?
Senator, if broadcasters understand, perhaps the first time in years, that they're going to be held accountable to the public interest, to broadcast hoax rules, to the news distortion policy, I think that's a good thing. I don't have a poster board, but listen, in 2018, you signed this letter right here to the FCC. You signed a letter to the FCC asking us to investigate Sinclair's news activities. You said investigate Sinclair's news activities. And you know what happened after that? Over 227 licenses were up for renewal or due during the Biden years. Almost none of them were renewed after your letter. Your letter produced results that we're seeking.
Chairman Carr.
Madam Chair.
Well, you're well over your time here. So,
a lot of it is because
no, it's not, because I looked at the clock and you were already 2 minutes over.
All right, so I'll just finish, Madam Chair. He is turning the Federal Communications Commission into the Federal Censorship Commission. It's a betrayal of the FCC's mission. You should resign, Mr. Chairman. You are creating a chilling effect.
Do you regret sending us a letter in 2018 asking the FCC to investigate
There's a lot of people on this committee.
Activities?
Thank you.
Do you regret sending a letter asking us to investigate
Chairman
Sinclair's
Carr,
news
we'll move to the
activities?
next question. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Chairman and the other commissioners. I'm going to turn back to the topic that Senator Capito, the chair, was talking about, and that's rural broadband, which is really important to so many of us. There's rural broadband, Mr. Chairman, as you know, and then there's Alaska, which is super rural. So I want to commend you in particular on your sustained focus on my state during your tenure, first as a commissioner, now as chairman. As you know, you, Commissioner Trustee, Commissioner Gomez, all the FCC commissioners have come up to Alaska. And I just want to give some statistics here, which I think are important. The Alaska Connect Fund order from the FCC through 2023, this is according to the fund order that was in front of the commission. The Alaska plan helped deploy and upgrade broadband to more than 96,000 previously unserved locations, delivered new or improved 4G LTE or better wireless services to roughly 65,000 Alaskans, and laid the groundwork for the Alaska Connect Fund to carry that success forward with added flexibility. So I want to thank the FCC's leadership, in particular you, Mr. Chairman, who has enabled this strong coordination with other federal programs and to help what is in the law, which is to be able to connect all Americans to broadband and internet connectivity, regardless of if you live in a city in the lower 48 or a rural native village in Alaska. So can you speak to how this Alaska-specific approach has helped drive these outcomes, which have been very positive, and why continuing this model is so important for connecting rural and remote Alaskans? And again, Mr. Chairman, I know you're taking a lot of incoming here. I want to compliment you on the good work that you've done as chairman and as a commissioner on the issues of focusing on my state, who are Americans who have very challenged communications issues because our state is so big and remote, and I think you've done an exceptional job. So can you talk to those issues?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. And frankly, I don't think people understand the change in trajectory that you have brought to Alaska in terms of connectivity. I remember the very first time that you had me come up to Alaska, which again, I agree with you, it's the only really way to understand the challenges that are up there. Frankly, in my view, I don't think the FCC had been taking the appropriate lawful approach with respect to Alaska. And
by the way, this is not some earmark, it's in the law, right?
And
this
you brought
is what
that to,
is required for all Americans, and my constituents are Americans.
And you brought that to my attention and others. And when I went up there in 2018, I had a chance to visit Unalaska, Dutch Harbor. It's an island part the way out the Aleutian chain. And there had been some talk about maybe bringing an undersea fiber cable across the Aleutians, but the plans were getting scuttled because of uncertainty caused by the FCC's, in my view, sort of missed application of the Communications Act. And you worked with the agency over a period of time with diligence and corrected that. And that created the stability to be able to see that investment. In fact, the phase one of that undersea cable is now complete. Unalaska is getting connected to next-gen high-speed internet. Thanks to that, there's a phase two that's coming. It's just not there. On a subsequent visit, you took me to a small village, Napakiak, which you can only reach by boat. And it was a place that had been long left behind in terms of the digital divide. And we had a multi-billion-dollar effort to close the divide. But Napakiak was not even on the national broadband map.
Yes.
The FCC acted, and Commerce Department back then, the Biden years, acted like it didn't even exist. And after you took us
From their perspective, it didn't exist. It was not on the map. You and I were in there. We did a town hall, 600 people, and we looked at everybody saying, according to the maps back in D.C., this town and all of you people from Alaska don't exist. So I'm glad you mentioned that one.
Look, there's obviously a long ways to go still, but the digital divide has been closing in Alaska. And again, Senator, I don't think we'd be in the position where we are in Alaska right now with connectivity, but for the leadership you've had on this committee.
Well, look, it's been your leadership and others. I want to thank Commissioner Trustee. I'm glad you were up in Alaska, Commissioner Gomez. It is an issue, I think, that unites the FCC, all the commissioners. Can you very quickly, maybe each one of you very quickly, speak to how the FCC's Alaska-specific funding frameworks, including the Alaska Plan and the Alaska Connect Fund,
will help ensure that projects like the one you just mentioned, the Unalaska project, and again, if you look at a map, this is the Aleutian Island chain. It goes way out in the Pacific, actually crosses the international date line, which a lot of people don't know. But these are Americans out there. It's a very strategic part of our country, very close to China and Russia and Japan and our.
Okay, you have that Senate hearing that is going on in Washington, D.C. with FCC Chair Brendan Carr. You saw some fireworks happen there just a few moments ago. Let's head to another hearing. This is the Georgia Senate with Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis, and we've seen fireworks in this also in their questioning as she testifies there before state senators. Let's go ahead and head back to that hearing.
TUI process goes through the White House counsel's office. She's asked, it's been asked and answered.
And it's your testimony today that the travel to Athens conference with the White House counsel, as far as you were aware, was due to a part of this TUI process that the governor's referencing.
I've testified. I don't recall anything about this.
Okay.
And I don't see how it's relevant to what your alleged purpose is. Now, your real purpose is to try to get elected, which I would say, Georgia, please, let's elect any lieutenant governor but this one.
We'll get to your work trying to elect lieutenant governors in a second, Madam DA, but for now we're talking about the
I've done no work with an elected governor, but if I will do some work with this. I see that Counselor left you alone today.
I'm not.
And he is running to be Attorney General of this state.
Madam DA,
and he is not qualified to be such. By this document where he put up a false document trying to prove that I met with the vice president, that shows you he does not have ethics. But there is somebody running for Attorney General that has been a state prosecutor, a federal prosecutor, a civil rights attorney, and a state's legislature. So if people want to vote for people that are ethical and actually have the experience to do the job, I'd say go donate now to Tanya Miller.
Madam DA, I've asked you about Mr. Wade. Did you speak with anyone that had worked with the January 6th committee or was a lawyer for the J6 committee?
That's been asked and answered. She said she'd never done it herself. That's what she testified.
Did you communicate with members of the J6 committee through any intermediaries that relayed messages back and forth on your behalf?
I don't recall ever speaking to anyone of the January 6th committee. What you asked me, though, is have I ever met someone? I am a public official. I meet people all over this country all the time. Shake hands, take pictures, kiss babies, all the things elected officials do. So I have no idea if I've ever met someone that may have been part of the January 6th committee.
And I want, what is J6? Is that where they stormed the Capitol
and killed a police officer?
Killed a police officer. Is that the same committee we're talking about? So that it's clear on the record.
The ones that have been exonerated, we say that we stand with law enforcement, but don't care when police officers get killed.
We're going to continue on to the next question. Governor, you are here to advise your counsel. You're not here to pontificate. Absolutely.
It is absolutely irrelevant, everything that you're trying to say.
How does this help you for laws? Yes, I'm sorry, Judge. I'm sorry, Governor.
If you've got something to ask it, but don't go into, well, there must have been a conspiracy here when they went up and looked into the folks that broke into the Capitol in shamu suits or whatever that was, and put the Vice President of the United States out saying, hang Mike Pence, and that they were prosecuted and then pardoned by President Trump, and you're trying to say and infer that it was illegal, immoral to investigate that it was part of a pending case. So
We're asking questions relative to the investigation, Governor. We're going to move on to the next question.
You're trying to infer some wrongdoing where none exists. Ask the question, let's move on.
Thank you for,
also to divide this country, and it should be noted that there were many great, honorable Republicans that brought this case to me because they knew what happened was wrong. One of them is Duncan, who's now running for governor.
So you have your endorsement.
I didn't endorse him.
Wait just a minute, don't answer that question.
So
But I do think it should be noted that although you are trying to divide this country, that this country is not divided. Most people in this country are trying to do the right thing every day as they get up for work. Most people know when someone is murdered and victimized, you don't act as a depraved human being and tease them and their family in their greatest time of loss. Most people.
So I want to talk about a little bit of a timeline as it relates to D.C. And just lay out a fact pattern here, and then I'll ask you a couple questions. On November 9th, then President Biden stated and was asked about President Trump returning to office, and he stated that we just have to demonstrate that he will not take power. If he does run, making sure he, under legitimate efforts of our Constitution, does not become the next president again. Are you familiar with that quotation from the president?
That has nothing to do with this inquiry. If you want to subpoena President Biden, subpoena him down here. I'll come. I might even represent him. He's got a fee. I hope he's got something left. We're getting mighty thin.
So a couple of days after this, President Trump did indeed announce that he was running for president. As you can see on the date there, November 15th, 2022. And then the very next day, and we've referenced this a second ago, but we're going to go back to it.
This helps you develop legislation. How?
The very next day, there was a conversation between Mr. Wade. I'm sorry, there was an 8-hour, was described here as an interview with D.C. and the White House.
Interview with who?
It reads interview D.C./White House. It's on the screen.
They said that they had.
No, I'm laying a foundation here, Governor.
Don't answer yet. Let me listen to the question.
On November 18th, the very same day as this 8-hour phone call with the White House, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed Special Counsel Jack Smith. And around that same period of time, some news reports say the same day, but we know within 2 weeks of that time, Matthew Colangelo, who is the former third highest ranking official at DOJ, tendered his resignation to take a position in the Manhattan prosecutor's office, which would go on to also indict President Trump.
He committed crimes a lot of places.
And convicted by the jury of his peers.
And you
So-
know,
so
you all
on
want to,
November-
no,
on
this is
November-
very
on
important.
November
You
8th.
all want to intimidate people from doing the right thing, and you think that you're going to intimidate me. You all have been trying to intimidate me for 5 years, which is why I have not been able to live in my house for 5 years, because the N-word has been written on my house. Thousands of threats have come to my office, and instead of doing some legislation,
Madam
when
Chair,
someone,
just
no,
trying to get
when
here
someone
to
says
testify
something
before the committee.
inflammatory that you know is going to cause them to be the victims of crime, you ought to do something about it. But you see, I'm not Marjorie Taylor Greene. I ain't gonna quit in a month because somebody threatens me. I took an oath to do the right thing. People came into my community and committed a crime, and I indicted them. And rest assured, if someone else comes in my community and commits a crime, I will indict them again.
The Special Purpose Grand Jury released its report just under a month after this time frame on December 15th of 2022.
And said 39 people should
Is
be
that-
indicted, but in my discretion and looking at the evidence that was the most damning, I chose to only present an indictment to the grand jury of 19. And who knew? The citizens of Fulton County, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, non-politicals, all said these 19 people deserve to be indicted, and they were.
The question was, the Special Purpose Grand Jury released its report just under a month after this phone call between Mr. Wade and the White House. Just a month after, on the very same day, Jack Smith was appointed by Merrick Garland, and just a month after, the third-ranking member of the Department of Justice left the Department of Justice to go work for Alvin Bragg, that date being December 15th, 2022. Is that the date that the Special Purpose Grand Jury released its report?
I don't recall.
Yes, don't answer that. And let me tell you.
You don't recall? Does that?
She said she did not recall. And to try to everybody's a crook in your mind. Jack Smith's a
Well, there
crook.
were some crooks.
Well, I know, but
They were on the indictment.
So you reference your prosecutorial discretion and bringing these charges. I believe you say 50. You were talking kind of fast there. Was it 50 that you
I
said?
said that the grand jury recommended that 19 people be indicted. It's there. It's part of public record. What I did was look at all of the evidence against each of those persons, and I chose to only put forth an indictment that talked about the 19 most culpable. Those 19 were presented to a grand jury.
I just want to
that
clarify. You
grand
said 19
jury,
twice. I just want to clarify your testimony.
19 people were indicted.
Originally, how many were recommended? You said 19 for both. of those. That's what I
39
mean.
were recommended, 19 were presented.
How many of the electors, there were 16 electors here in the Capitol that cast votes for President Trump, is that correct?
I object. They were not electors.
There were
You
six.
talking about the fake electors that y'all sat in a hearing and listened to, many of y'all?
In this same room?
I was not in the room, but I'm referencing there were 16 electors who took part in that meeting. Is that your understanding?
Why are you not offended that people came before you and lied?
Were there 16
I
electors?
I don't remember.
Okay. How many did you indict?
What does this have to do with you developing legislation? Because this is not relevant, so I'm going to object relevance.
Where are we going? I thought this was supposed to be.
I thought y'all needed some help.
I thought it was supposed to be about rules of conduct. And so now you're getting into where the electors met here and they weren't really electors, and how many of them got indicted, and why did you do that?
We're here for far more.
Wait just a minute.
We're here for far more than rules of conduct.
Process on why she chose to do so. It was presented to two grand juries. They returned an indictment on one because the investigative grand jury cannot indict, it can only investigate. And so, how is this to do with the conduct and legislation? I'm amazed that everybody's fixated that the election was fixed 5 years ago.
We'll come back to this. We'll move on for a second.
All right, let's move on for a good bit, maybe a half hour.
Well, we'll see what you think of this next line of questioning, Governor. In January of 2021, you referenced his name earlier, but you hired Jeff DeSantis to be the Deputy District Attorney overseeing the Media Relations Unit of the District Attorney's Office. Is that correct?
And strategy.
Media Relations and Strategy. Can you describe the difference between those two separate roles, or are you just saying that's the title?
That's the title.
It's the title. Okay. Was he serving in your office in April of 2021?
Yes.
Okay. He's classified those in ADA for personnel purposes.
He is a lawyer. He
Yes,
went to
works.
Emory Law School, was there 2 years ahead of me and graduated. He's my elder.
That's not hard for me.
When you're referencing media relations, how would you describe the overall role of media relations?
This has nothing, I don't read about media relations in any of these resolutions. It's beyond the scope.
This is within the scope of the state's funding to that department.
Not
To
a
that.
question about who's the director of media relations.
I didn't ask I'm asking what the role of media relations is.
Neither is that. Don't answer it. I instruct you not to answer. Completely irrelevant.
Your objection is relevance.
No, my objection is the reason she hired and the reason that she hires and fires employees, and the reason that she undertakes to run her office is a matter of employees, which is exempted and is privileged and is a deliberative process.
So you are asserting that the role of a media relations director is privileged?
You can move on.
You want clarity on that, Counselor?
So you're instructing the witness
I'm
not to
gonna-
answer on the
I'm
relevance?
instructing.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying to understand what the objection
I
is.
stated my objection. Where's the court report? Here's the court report.
It would help if you, Governor, respectfully, it would help if the objections could be limited to like 5 to 10 seconds. I mean, I don't need a speaking objection.
I talk slow.
I'll give you 30 seconds, but it's counted by words, Governor.
I'm a country lawyer, and it's real hard for me to get things done. It is beyond the scope of the resolution, number one.
All right, can we break and address that? if
I'm going to state my objection. I mean, I'm not here.
That's fine, we'll do it all together.
I'm not here.
I'm just trying to understand.
I'm not here to debate you.
I'm not trying to debate,
I
Governor.
think he's just looking for clarity on your objection, Governor.
Well, it's beyond the scope.
Okay.
Irrelevant, and the decisions she makes on personnel are not subject to inquiry.
All right, on the beyond the scope, I'm sorry. Oh, I can do that, I guess. Is that me?
It's on.
Oh, it's on?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you hear him?
I know I'm not going to convince you, but I just want to give you the chance. I certainly know I'm not going to convince you, Madam DA. Whereas, this is lines 26 to 30 of Senate Resolution 5. Whereas many have concluded that the conduct of District Attorney Willis has brought her and her office into disrepute.
My office has brought myself into respect.
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
Wait just a minute.
I'm, s-
And so that is.
I'm not done, Governor.
Okay, go ahead.
Undermine public confidence in the fair, impartial, and
The public voted me again by 68% respect.
Madam DA, I don't think that it's, well, you continued. I mean, I've got my second fundraiser email from you while we're sitting here.
Did you donate?
Impartial. I did early on when you ran against Paul Howard, and you know that.
You selected the best DA in the country.
I'm just here as a lawyer, ma'am. Fair and impartial, disinterested administration of justice by prosecutors across our state, and cast significant doubt as to the purpose and validity of the charges of her office has brought in regard to the 2020 presidential election. Further, when you get to the language, the actionable language under powers and duties of the committee is hereby reauthorized to undertake legislative investigation into the issues mentioned above or related thereto. So I would submit it's broad. I presume that doesn't change your position, but I just, okay. You say that it is irrelevant. You mentioned at the start of this that you were going to be able to object to privilege. Is it your position that relevance is a privilege that you're asserting?
It is more than just privilege. It is also that it's beyond the scope. And what you've read me there is just confirmed that it's beyond the scope.
Or related thereto when it speaks to?
Related thereto refers to the 2020 election.
Correct. And both you and Madam DA have said that her decision to bring the case and how it was brought and who was brought against,
Correct.
the exact things the Court of Appeals talked about, those initial pretrial decisions,
Correct.
caused people to question and the fairness and of justice. And so if that is what the courts have said, not me, I'm not here to say one way or the other, but if that's what the courts have said, and that is in the language of the Senate resolution, your position is that it is limited to what?
It certainly does not encompass who the press secretary is and the DA's.
Okay, but the question that was on the floor was, what is the role of a media relations person?
What his role would be.
Fine.
How does that got anything to do?
I think the question was, and if you need, I'm sure it could be asked this way, is what is the role of the person? And so to that question, which does not include any individual, but what is the role of the office? The objection is scope and privilege, or scope and relevance?
Correct.
Okay.
And also personnel.
And since you mentioned fundraising, I'd like to make sure that this is part of the record. Counselor believing he's going to go after Fonnie Willis and asking to donate at the last period. I also have 50 of these for the press because this is about folks sitting here trying to get elected.
Do we have anything else?
We do have a lot more, Governor. We'll take a lunch break just so you all are aware if you want to make arrangements at 12:30.
I'd like to go straight through.
We'll take a lunch break at 12:30. Madam DA, relative to your full-time employed staff, such as Mr. DeSantis, what rules, if any, exist relative to other work that they can do, either contract work or employment work, outside of your office?
If it's an investigator and they're working a job, off-duty job, extra job, as most police officers do, the chief of investigations has to sign off on approval approving them for that work site, as well as the district attorney. So that is to the law enforcement that report to me, because, you know, I have a police department there, and so they have to get it signed off on that it's appropriate work. I don't like my investigators working at nightclubs, but they can certainly work at a store, or they like to work at State Farm Arena and things of that nature. If it's a professional that's not an investigator and not a lawyer, they're pretty much able to do whatever. Of course, they can't do it on my hours, but they can work whatever. And if it's a lawyer, prosecutors are not able to practice law doing that. If, you know, they were selling pies at Christmas, I probably don't care.
Somewhere in between practicing law and selling pies, are there any restrictions besides that?
None that come to mind.
Okay. Are you aware of an entity called Critical Mention?
I am. I'm aware that you all use it.
What can you tell me about Critical Mention?
Critical Mention kind of tells you when your office or an issue that concerns your community comes into the news space. It has been used as a device by my office to find witnesses. It's been used as a device to determine if there's a pressing issue among my constituents that they are concerned about. But it is basically an outlet that lets you know what's going on in your community. It's helped us find witness victims, and like I said, been used for security.
Help me understand how it helps you find victims or find out what's happening in the community. What's the...
You would be surprised, because people will complain about some issue. You won't know anything about it. Somebody got robbed. It brings cases to your attention. Because, you know, I'm not a small prosecutor's office. I'm a huge prosecutor's office, and so it brings things to your attention. I can't give you more than that.
Are you aware of any other uses that your office uses Critical Mention for?
I don't know all the uses. I gave you some.
Okay. You sent a letter to Governor Kemp, Secretary of State Raffensperger, and Attorney General Carr. I believe it was essentially a records retention notice in early 2021. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
I didn't want anyone destroying evidence. Not that they would do so intentionally, but I didn't want them to do it unintentionally.
So on the screen is a report from Critical Mention that we referenced earlier. This report was in an email from Mr. DeSantis to you and someone who worked for you at the time. And this came the week after the time that the letter was sent.
Which letter?
The letter I just referenced to the governor, the AG, and the secretary. Mr. DeSantis's email states that the analytics graph is attached as PDF. The previous one I sent was for, quote, Fulton County District Attorney. This one is for, quote, Fonnie Willis. We are getting more coverage via your name than by title. This graph has the coverage value for the last week at over $150 million. That's obviously high, but even adjusting downward, it's still a huge number. And then what's highlighted in red here is part of the Critical Mention report that mentions mentions, which I'm going to just assume how often the search, which I think that he said this one is for your first and last name, what the audience was, which was approximately 6.3 million people, and then publicity value, which I think is what Mr. DeSantis is referencing when he references coverage value at $150 million. Do you recall seeing this report?
I don't.
Do you recall Critical Mention being used at all within your office to track the value of media as it related to the coverage of the election interference case?
Told you she doesn't.
She told me she doesn't recognize this chart. I'm asking generally if she...
Never seen the report.
This report, I'm asking if you've seen any report.
I don't know that I've seen any report, but I've definitely heard Mr. DeSantis say, you know, that these numbers are always inflated. So yes, I've heard of it before. But you're asking me about a particular report.
Have you seen this page from a PowerPoint document before?
I've seen it. I don't recall it.
Okay, this was also sent by Mr. DeSantis to your email And here, this captures a broader range of time. The first one, I believe, was for just a couple of weeks. This captures essentially the first 11 months of 2021, at which point in time those audience impressions had grown from the previous number of 6 million, if I recall correctly. The publicity value on the last one that we looked at was 150 million. This one is $637 million. Do you recall seeing any other report that was tracking the publicity value of your name, your work, or your prosecutions?
I can never recall seeing a report. Does not mean I have not seen one. I do not recall seeing a report. But so that we're clear, I've heard Mr. DeSantis mention things that are along what you're talking about.
This is an email from Mr. DeSantis, dated around the same time frame as the first report, February 17th, and he's referencing now just the first search that he did, which was for Fulton County District Attorney. He lays out that name received $67 million, which he already said was more than your name. And he concludes his email by stating that even half of that value would be staggering.
Right. He doesn't believe the numbers. He thinks they're inflated, and that's kind of what I reference him
Sure.
talking, that he doesn't believe the numbers.
But he does believe that the value, whatever value, what value means, that we would all need to interpret there, but that even at half of the value, he believes that would be staggering.
You're asking me to speak on...
No, I'm just stating what I'm reading in the context here.
How does this help?
Well, now I'm going to ask you, as a public prosecutor, why would media coverage and the earned media value, either for your title or your name, be relevant to your job as a prosecutor?
You'll have to ask somebody else, because I don't know the answer to what someone else is thinking. I do know that it has been very important to me, and it continues to be very important to me, that we are very transparent with our public about what we're doing, and that the media, when they're doing their job, it is important that they tell the public what the work is that we're doing, and that they tell them what the services are that we provide them, and that we are always here for them. So that is an important value. The first time, I don't want my constituency to see me, and this is something I say all the time, first time they get to know the Fulton County District Attorney shouldn't be when I'm locking up their nephew. That's not when it should happen. The first time they should see us is when we are out in the community doing service projects, whether that is I am in the schools. I am the only district attorney in the country that all year long I am in the schools with our children, making sure that we see them in the classrooms and not the courtroom. So that is me touching my students and their parents. The first time they see me is when I'm giving away book bags. The first time they see me is when we're doing Christmas drives or Thanksgiving drives. The first time they see us is so that they know that they are coming to an office that is a judgment-free zone. And I think it's why, and I have this for the media too, I have a 92% conviction rate this year. I tried more cases than any prosecutor in the state. That's the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District. That's the AG's office. My office is doing this work. We are keeping the community safe. Because I know y'all won't believe me. I brought a report here from the Atlanta Police Foundation talking about how crime is down in our community. And it's not the district attorney's office alone. It is the district attorney's office combined with the law enforcement in this community. See, I care about the police. So I don't excuse that an officer got killed on January the 6th. To me, it's a problem.
The question was, as a public prosecutor, why would media coverage be relevant?
A very fiery hearing that is taking place there in the state of Georgia as state senators are questioning Fulton County DA Fani Willis there. This 5 years